Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Pisces and your moon in Virgo. This was requested and it's very interesting because these two signs oppose one another. They are complementary signs, and it's funny because that sounds, kind of contradictory to have opposing and complementary as two terms to describe this connection, but they're complementary because they do go together, even though they can be an odd couple, Pisces and Virgo. But the elements are compatible, and they represent houses that are both important in terms of our balance in life. So Virgo rules the sixth house, which is about our everyday schedule, how we choose to order our time, as well as our health. So the body, you could say, and how it functions. And, diet goes along with that as well. And the service to others that we provide. So Virgo's an earth sign, so it's dealing with these practical matters. I mean, there's also pets are associated with the sixth house, as our co-workers and the office environment, the workspace. But the 12th house is Pisces house, and that's very mystical. It's very otherworldly. It's definitely not a practical area of life, So we need both of these. If we have one without the other, we're either grounded with no inspiration and no vision of something greater than the 3D reality, or we're just kind of floating in the ether. So we need both of those things. So the Pisces energy is in the forefront, being the sun sign. Somebody wrote a comment to me, and it wasn't a bad comment or something that I totally disagree with, saying that they disagreed with my idea of the moon being the shadow self and about emotions. I don't know exactly what they said, but I think they were rejecting my contention that emotions are chaotic and irrational. And I kind of stand by that, maybe because I have the moon in Virgo, and people with the moon in Virgo are probably wanting to avoid anything that seems kind of like emotionally extra in any way. But, there's a detachment, in other words, with that type of moon sign. And so I, fully admit that I might be coming from a particular point of view, and that there might be other possibilities. But I'm trying to distinguish the moon in Pisces from the sun in Pisces, in other words. So right now I'm talking about the sun in Pisces and what it represents. And it's your aspirational self. It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you come here to shine your light with? And this is not your ultimate self, being a Pisces, because obviously this is just one lifetime. And unless you believe this is the only lifetime that you have, then maybe you do think that you are a Pisces forever. But even that, the physical life is over within a matter of years. So does that really wash? Anyway, the bottom line is that those gifts, those talents that you have will tend to be either creative or intuitive. But it's highly possible that you work for the government, or you work, maybe you're a teacher. You could be doing just about anything. It's just that there are certain things that you might have talent in and that you might have interests in, and they will tend to be things that deal with fantasy, deal with not the reality, the whole card, harsh, the cold, harsh reality of life, those kinds of things are not appealing to you, and you would rather express yourself in a more idealistic way. So that's why you might be drawn to the arts. But in terms of making a living, you might be doing something completely different. So it also depends on where your sun is at. Because if your sun is in the 6th house, which is Virgo's house, like I said, you might be really like a Virgo. So with the moon in Virgo, a Pisces person is really benefits from this, I feel. Because I have said over and over again that I really suspect that people who have the sun or the moon, possibly the rising sign, in Pisces and Scorpio in particular, can be people that have had to endure quite a lot. And typically we would call that trauma. And not everyone deals with that in the same way. Some people thrive after having come from incredibly difficult childhoods. So it's not a given that if that has happened to you, that you're doomed to experience something really destructive for the rest of your life. One of the aspects of the of Neptune, which is your ruler, is that it tends to be very devoid of boundaries. And this is one of the reasons why people who have a prominent Pisces tend to have a hard time saying no to people, not just because they may not be assertive, and that they may lack that ability to stand up for themselves in a very confident way, but they really feel sympathy towards other people and want to make them happy and, be that healer. And that can lend itself to a lot of problems because it may cause you to attract people who are very, what would we call them? Well, users, people who want to take, like takers, and they say that empaths attract narcissists, and that can be another thing. I see those two types of personalities as a bit different, but they can kind of coincide too. But I think of a taker as just somebody who isn't contributing to the well-being of others. They're kind of like sucking from other people's life force and their resources, but they're not providing anything of themselves. And so the narcissist is, bad news altogether in terms of being, just negative in their behavior, maybe, demeaning and things like that. So the point is that when you have the moon in Virgo, it can go either way, but I think a lot of times there's a self-preservation factor where you really want your life to be orderly. You don't want chaos. So you may actually gravitate more towards doing practical things. And for some Pisces people, they may reject their psychic abilities, their proclivity towards anything that has to do with mysticism, because they see that as keeping them down, keeping them back. Really, Pisces is quite a chameleon, and they can take on the characteristics of any sign that they inhabit. I mean, that they want to. And for some Pisces people, they choose to be very disciplined. And this is usually a reaction to growing up in a lot of chaos where there was no set schedules and things like that. And it makes them feel safe to have those routines or schedules. And, take it from somebody who has Neptune in the sixth house about how it's like you can be in your day, because Neptune being the ruler of Pisces, there's that connection, and which I have, and just be like totally doing whatever, whenever, but not having that sense of clarity. I think that would be the best way of putting it, of, being on a schedule, doing this, that, and the other thing in a row, and feeling that sense of productivity because you're doing things in a logical way. You're not just kind of feeling your way through the day. So, another thing that can come up here is that you can feel uncomfortable with your feelings because even though your sun is in a water sign, you have your moon in an earth sign, and the earth always craves tangibility, craves logic, and that sort of thing. And so I could see somebody with this combination really kind of trying to make sense of their emotions and other people's emotions. And there might even be a few of you who get annoyed when you hear other people talking about their problems because you feel like they're whining or something like that. Like there could be some of that going on as well. I think, like I said before, that the moon can be the shadow self. And so with Virgo, the shadow aspects of Virgo involve being overly critical, being overly clinical. So rather than coming from the heart, there can be like a coldness, the intellect really front and center, but not the heart chakra, not necessarily open. And I can see that in myself, even though I think that I am sensitive, I do see that aspect in myself. And I don't think it has to be a liability. I don't think it has to be anything negative towards other people, as long as you are aware that you are doing it and that you do have compassion, that you practice compassion or empathy. But one of the things that can happen coming from maybe a background where you saw people that were in a lot of pain, maybe you saw from an early age that your parents weren't gods, that they were all too human, that they had very obvious defects or weaknesses. And typically with Pisces, this will come in the form of addiction and mental illness. And that is so broad, the term mental illness, because you could even say addiction is a form of mental illness. I really don't like the term mental illness. I would rather say mental disorders, because it's not working as it should, but not treating it like a disease or anything. So, using the example of addiction, if you had one or both parents who had alcoholism, drug addiction, and they were unable to take care of you, you might have had to fend for yourself from a young age. And at the same time, you may have observed how they were behaving and vowed to yourself, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do these drugs because I don't want to end up like that. The thing about Virgo is there is an emotional intelligence. There is an ability to look at reactions within the self and to analyze them and say, where is this coming from? And also to observe that in other people and to see and to learn from other people's mistakes. So I think that the moon in Virgo can really make you more discerning. Unfortunately, the flip side of discernment is being judgmental, as being kind of arrogant and looking down on other people and their decisions and things like that. Luckily for the average Pisces, you tend to be more accepting and more empathetic. So even if you see that something somebody did is disastrous, you're not going to condemn them for it. But by the same token, you might say, oh, I do not want to end up like that. And I think that this is also great because this grounds you emotionally. Because, when somebody is a water sign, they might tend to be easily, triggered and thrown off balance by things that happen to them. And this gives you more of a detachment so that you can take things more in stride and not take them personally. Although I will say that the moon in Virgo can be quite insecure, can question oneself, question their judgments, maybe even have negative self-talk and all those kinds of things, be hard on themselves. But overall, it may end up as more of a plus than a minus to have this moon sign. You may have had a mother or a mother figure who was critical. She may have been aware of health and your health and been very adamant that you follow certain diets, or at the very least, she may have just been too aware of your struggles, challenges, deficiencies, whatever you want to call it, and brought them to the forefront. And this may, as an adult, make you quite self-conscious. This has been one of the things that I have had to really work on. But again, when I say work, I'm not really talking about head-on work. Just being aware of and plowing ahead and not allowing yourself to get caught up in that. Oh yeah, that's a big one, is perfectionism. So your mom may have demonstrated perfectionistic tendencies, and now you do that. You took the ball running and are doing that quite a bit. That's something that has to be, done away with, because it can really impede your creativity, and the moon can represent that creativity. If you think that, everything that you do, you have to scrutinize so much, and you can't just allow yourself to be human, that may make you not do something at all. And that doesn't make any sense. You're always going to have an eye for doing things as thoroughly as possible, and that's a good thing. But you don't have to be perfect. Nobody is. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say. Don't think you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you are someone who has rejected your psychic gifts in any way, and being a Pisces, you may have also inner planets in Aquarius or Pisces, like your Mercury sign, for instance, which can be your mentality, can really speak to your intuitive capacity. And if you have it in Pisces or Aquarius, as well as having the sun in Pisces, you may be quite psychic. And yet you might push that away, thinking that it's unscientific, it's, woo-woo. It's somehow not important, when really it can be super important to others and even to yourself to develop that gift. And that, rejecting that side of yourself can lead you to overemphasize the logical, rational, maybe somebody that's interested in sciences, so the scientific part of yourself. And, Pisces being a water sign can be prejudiced. And we think of the word prejudice as, having to do with racism or something like that, or sexism, one of those isms. But it can be anything where you have a personal stake in it, a personal experience with it, and you overgeneralize it. You act like everything is going to be like that. And so being able to understand that, even if you have had negative experiences in the past and you feel like you want to be more rational, because it just feels more like concrete, that you do not fall prey to that belief. I do think that sometimes with somebody who is highly intuitive and maybe has even had psychic experiences, there might be the fear element there as well, because sometimes people can get a bit hijacked. They might be an open channel for not so benevolent spirits to come into the picture. And if they had any kind of negative interactions like that, they may feel like, oh my gosh, this is bad. This isn't a good thing. And so they have to create an environment where they're channeling safely. And I don't know too much about that, but I just thought that was worth mentioning, because you do have this side to yourself that is very spiritual, and it would be a shame to just completely turn your back on it simply because it feels safer to emphasize more of the material elements in life. But this is another position that might really thrive with a belief system like shamanism, where the earth is front and center in the religious, I don't want to say worship, but whatever word fits for that, revering of the earth, respecting the earth. So that can be something that is appealing to you as well. In terms of personal relationships, you do have to watch for being a doormat in relationships, as I kind of alluded to earlier. Being a Pisces, but also with the moon in Virgo, sometimes there can be that overly solicitous type of mentality, which is basically that you want to be of help to your partner. And if they are the kind of person who isn't really about anything, they could be leaning on you to provide them structure in life. And while that's not, evil, it could easily create a codependent relationship. So you want to really set strong boundaries. And this goes back to when you first meet someone and you're first dating someone. You don't just set boundaries when you're about to tie the knot or move in together. It has to be through dialogue, I feel, where you talk about what is important to you and you see how that other person meshes with you. So anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.